Gabala Bright Africa was a 17-year-old, very intelligent university student in 1986 who had just won a BBC award for writing the best essay on the state of the African economies when his world came crashing down.
All these are scars. Indeed, even here, there are bigger scars on my private parts because they got stones, strings tied on my penis, and even it got cuts in some part. Ruptured on some part. On my tests, you feel a lot of pain, you cry, you can't even cry. They whipped me. It was really terrible, terrible. It's the most terrible whipping I've ever received. Indeed, they made me thumbprint a document when I was indeed even subconscious. I had no witnesses, and he released all the others and sentenced me to death.
Gabala, who vehemently protests his conviction, spent the next 27 years on death row. When he was released from prison, he was ready to start from scratch since he had lost everything. Unfortunately, he was arrested a second time, and this time he suffered extreme physical and psychological torture. For 52-year-old Ndaula Grace Andrew, the month of August 2014 will forever live in his memory. He was then a successful head teacher of a secondary school and a successful farmer. He had a bright future for himself and his family until he was arrested for criminal trespass on the land he inherited from his father.
One of them even tried to pull out my eyes using his fingers. So by that time, my eyes were swollen. I couldn't even lie down. The pain I had could not allow me even to lie down. Trying to lie down, I could feel a lot of pain. There was a place where there was a group of insects, and they dumped me there so that they scattered all over my body. And I spent there some time.
The ordeal lasted for 3 weeks, but it has left lifelong physical and psychological impact on his life that will take him several years to recover. For many years, Ugandans like Gabala and Ndaula have suffered acts of torture perpetrated mainly by security agents and other organizations. The lack of a clear law criminalizing torture enabled perpetrators to elude justice while the victims suffered in silence. In order to raise awareness and tackle rampant acts of torture, civil society organizations under their umbrella body Coalition Against Torture, CAT, lobbied for the enacting of a law specifically criminalizing torture.
Before the law was passed, there was no specific law against torture. The legal framework only presented itself for grievous bodily harm and assault. This journey started in the early 2000s, where we sensitized various stakeholders, especially the security agencies, the judiciary, and even the other arms of government like Parliament.
In 2012, the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act was passed in Parliament in line with the United Nations Convention Against Torture, to which Uganda is a signatory.
When you look at the 1995 Constitution, it is clearly provided under Article 24 that no person shall be subjected to any form of torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Within the same Constitution, under Article 44, it is clearly stated that notwithstanding anything in the Constitution, there shall be no derogation from the enjoyment of freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. But this Act upholds the provision of the United Nations Convention Against Torture
The men didn't want the president to assent to it because it brings liability to an individual. People have been used to the Attorney General will be sued, but this time he said the individual. And that's very, very critical, because you as an individual should take a decision in doing what you are doing, because you should take responsibility if it's wrong.
To ensure that the law is implemented and acts of torture curbed, human rights defenders like African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, ACTV, a pioneer non-governmental organization in the provision of services to survivors of torture, have accelerated efforts aimed at raising awareness about the law on torture.
We operate guided by particularly 5 strategic objectives. The first objective is provision of quality holistic treatment and rehabilitation services, and in this we provide a package, a complete package to survivors of torture, which includes medical treatment, it includes psychological services, it includes legal advice, of course physiotherapy services, and any kind of support that a survivor of torture might need in their rehabilitation process, including referrals for specialized services that we cannot locally provide at the African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims.
ACTV has made efforts to make the law easy for the ordinary people to understand by translating it into 4 widely spoken local languages in Uganda, which are Luganda, Lunyakitara, Kiswahili and Luo. Copies of the law in these languages have been widely distributed.
Not all of them have what? Guns. We find the whole year we have only one normal case involving guns. But all others are mere assault, rocks and a backbone. You need to clean.
The proportionality when we are effecting an arrest, measuring it, but you may even know that the offense was there, but when you go there again, you still torture. Only that let us measure which force should we use to encounter the arrest.
This is a training workshop being conducted by ACTV for the different units of police taking place in Kasese town in western Uganda. The purpose of the workshop is to create awareness among the police officers about the anti-torture law. Kasese district witnessed a lot of post-election violence and acts of torture.
What I've learned from this training is that when you commit a crime related to torture, it is individual responsibility. You don't need to be stood in like before. It used to be Attorney General standing in for an officer on duty who has made a mistake. You have to account, and the law takes its course. It is a responsibility of a police officer to protect human rights and enforce the Anti-Torture Act, regardless of what it takes.
I'm going to make sure as I go, first of all, inspect the cells. We've been inspecting them, but what I've learned, I'm going to do more on inspection. Make sure I look at all suspects. Are they tortured? Do they have scars? I will ask how did they get scars and see how we can treat them. Of course, perpetrators, those ones have to face justice.
Other institutions that have also benefited from these advocacy campaigns include the Directorate of Public Prosecutions staff, the judiciary, and the Uganda People's Defense Forces.
We have had a workshop with the state attorneys, the prosecutors. I would also beg that the ACTV also, if it could also have a workshop with the judiciary, it would be a great help, because then the judiciary will begin to appreciate their roles. Our judges do not yet seem to appreciate this, and they continue dismissing cases against public servants. When we sue these public servants personally, the judges still think that we should only proceed against the Attorney General.
ACTV has also carried out several sensitization campaigns for grassroots communities, like this dialogue meeting taking place in Kawempe Division, a Kampala city suburb. These kind of meetings have helped people to stand up against torture and seek justice.
nyongedde okumanya eddembe lyange nga bwe nsobola okumanya nti ndina eddembe omuntu antulungujiza nsobola okugenda okulipootinga nemba nga gavumenti neba ng'esobola okukolako oyo omuntu akoze eki antulugunya.
Other anti-torture coalition partners like the Uganda Human Rights Commission have also carried out public awareness campaigns using broadcast vans at trading centers.
We've changed our tactic in sensitizing the public. We no longer go into conference rooms because we've realized, first of all, you deal with the limited in numbers. 2, they don't discern. So what do we do with these vans? We said there is a marketplace in Kawempe. We go by the roadside, we park our van, we put on our loudspeakers, and we start talking to the people. We did a pilot project here in Kampala. We did it in Chiseka, we did it in Nakasero, we did it in St. Valley Kudembe, and it worked very well. Somebody is welding, but incidentally is listening.
During the Anti-Torture Day commemoration held in Kampala, government and other human rights defenders used the opportunity to popularize the anti-torture law.
Torture is very primitive, and I'm glad in Uganda it's against the law. And obviously, we take exception with those who perpetrate this primitive method of extracting information. I would like to assure you that you have my support and the support of the Uganda government in your endeavor in both the crusade against torture and the human reparation for torture victims.
In targeting key stakeholders for advocacy campaigns, human rights defenders like Actv have created a high level of awareness and a strong momentum against acts of torture. Print and electronic media now reports on more issues relating to torture at the forefront of their coverage.
If we go by what has been published in various reports, some of the institutions, the torture rate has gone down. But it has reduced in certain institutions, like in prisons. However, there are also challenges that torture is increasing among the police, within the police, especially with issues related to freedom of assembly and association.
One of the biggest challenges to the implementation of Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act is that the police, who are supposed to prevent acts of torture and arrest the culprits, are still the main perpetrators of torture, according to the newly released Uganda Human Rights 18th Annual Report, which identifies the main perpetrators of torture as police, private individuals, and the UPDF, among others.
We are still disappointed because we have been with the police in this fight together all these years. The police actually also are our resource persons when we train their own. We have even gone to their training school in Kabalye and trained even over 7,000 recruits. So we have been creating awareness in the Uganda Police Force. We will continue creating awareness. We have champions in the police.
Another challenge to prosecuting perpetrators of torture is that most vicious acts of torture occur in secrecy behind closed doors. It is very hard for such victims to provide witnesses or other forms of concrete evidence.
I would suggest that the anti-torture law should be amended to allow for non-substantive evidence, like say medical reports, and also the circumstances that a person has been imprisoned or celled in a certain police station where that officer alleged to have tortured him belonged. That is the only evidence a torture victim can have.
Despite these challenges, enactment of the Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act has given human rights defenders the right tool to fight against impunity or perpetrators of torture. This is a timely law which, if well implemented, will go a long way in ensuring that Uganda becomes a torture-free society.
The community should also learn to be vigilant, because law enforcement at times fails because of people who are so tolerant to abusers.
The law is very, very well thought out. The law is very good for Uganda, but we need to do more trainings to the law enforcement officers to really understand the law so that they can do good investigations. We need to do civic awareness among the public to ensure that they can come forward and report cases of torture. And we really should also sensitize our courts of law on how to really implement or put into action that law.
We will still continue disseminating as widely as possible the law because we would like each and every Ugandan to know that there is an anti-torture law because there are torture occurrences happening all over the country.
Together, we can fight this beast called torture. This beast is swallowing the little humanity left within. Where is your will to fight the powerful? Where is your passion to defend a common people with a common cry?
The African Center for Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, Actv, and the Coalition Against Torture in Uganda, together in the fight against torture. Let's implement the Anti-Torture Law 2012. Let's fight torture and implement the law. Let's fight torture and implement the law. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu Uganda. Tukwatire wamu, tulwanyisa okutulugunyizibwa mu Uganda. The other day I was walking on the street. I saw a young man being beaten up. His hands were tied up, his head twisted. We want information, that's all they say. I don't know anything, that's what he said.